This is the Pro Wrestling Report PrimeTime TV, the longest-running pro wrestling news program in the world, with your hosts David Hero and Damian Nelson.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Pro Wrestling Report Primetime Saturday night. Damian Nelson sitting alongside David Octavius, the Tiberius, the alleged backyard one-time Knockouts Hall of Famer, Divas Champion Hero.
Wait a minute. The streak is over.
We're going to get to that in just a few minutes. The streak is indeed over after a very active Wrestlemania last Sunday night.
Not that streak. The other streak. You need to add one more title to my title.
What are you talking about?
The PWR Draft World Champion of the World.
Those results have not been released nor tallied yet.
Yes.
That's next week on this show.
I saw a sneak peek.
You can't have seen a sneak peek because the accounting firm of Dewey, Cheatham & Howe is still working on the results.
You're going to screw me out of this thing, aren't you?
Screw you out of anything. The results will be released next week. We have a loaded show this week, and all you want to do is talk about yourself.
Yes. Because I'm the champ.
Let's get to this week's big story, ladies and gentlemen, as we cover all things that happened last week in the world of professional wrestling. And unfortunately, earlier this week, some sad news as we learned of the Ultimate Warrior's passing on Tuesday. Here's what we know as of right now. Ultimate Warrior, of course, a man who was entered into the WWE Hall of Fame this past Saturday night. He was back in Scottsdale, Arizona on Tuesday, and while at a hotel with his wife, he collapsed after clutching his chest and was treated by the paramedics and then taken to the hospital, where he was shortly thereafter pronounced dead. Young 54 years old was the Warrior, and just an amazingly surreal experience after his induction into the Hall of Fame this past Saturday night, his appearance at Wrestlemania this past Sunday night, and then his appearance on Raw just this past Monday. But what's even more surreal are some of the words he said this past Monday. And I'm going to repeat for you a portion of the Ultimate Warrior's address to the Raw audience this past Monday, which just simply became a very profoundly interesting statement from Warrior just less than 24 hours before he would pass away. And he said on Monday on Raw, "Every man's heart one day beats its final beat. His lungs breathe their final breath. And if what that man did in his life makes the blood pulse through the body of others and makes them bleed deeper than something that is larger than life, then his essence, his spirit, will be immortalized by the storytellers, by the loyalty of those who honor him and make what that man did live forever. You are the legend makers of Ultimate Warrior. I am Ultimate Warrior. You are the Ultimate Warrior fans, and the spirit of the Ultimate Warrior will run forever." How amazing that he said these words just some 24 hours before he would meet his maker and pass away back at his home after an amazing weekend of celebration of the Warrior's life.
Absolutely amazing. It was like it was a storybook ending for him. You know, to finally come back out of exile 18 years away, comes back home, does the Hall of Fame, does Access, does the red carpet, does WrestleMania, does Monday Night Raw. It was his way of saying goodbye. I mean, maybe that was the closure he needed.
Seemingly it was, and you can't even take away from what he said in his Hall of Fame speech itself. Talked about the DVD, the self-destruction of the Ultimate Warrior that was released several years back by WWE, and talked about redemption, talked about his two beautiful young daughters, his wife. We learned, and we talked about this on our tribute show that we did on YouTube just a couple of days ago, but he talked about Ultimate Warrior, Warrior Hellwig, Jim Hellwig, the man. And we learned who that man was in his Hall of Fame acceptance speech this past Saturday night. And as you said, David, it was a storybook ending to his life, which at this point we believe, based on the reports that we received, that it was the police department in Scottsdale said that this was a catastrophic medical event. It is believed that it was a massive heart attack that took the life of Ultimate Warrior. And aside from that stupid box, Nancy Grace, the media coverage of this has been very respectful of Warrior's life and career, and not the normal speculation that runs wild about drugs and things of that nature, but just an amazing story that was told over the course of the last 4 days of the life of the Ultimate Warrior.
An amazing story. I mean, all of he was able to bury the hatchet with Vince McMahon, with Kevin Nash, with Hulk Hogan, with Ted DiBiase, with many of the guys he worked with in the past. Finally had closure on a career. Respect was given. It was earned. It was delivered. And I am so happy that we made it to the Hall of Fame to see that induction.
Skipped out last year, went this year. And
skipped out a few of this year,
there,
too, but we went back to our seats for that final one.
Having been there and listening to that speech, which was just so ultimately tremendous. Rest in peace, Ultimate Warrior, and thank you, at least from my perspective as a fan, for the years of entertainment and the amazing service that you gave to the wrestling industry. Life cut way too short, way too soon, but again, it was a storybook ending for the life, the career of the Ultimate Warrior.
Follow us on Twitter for breaking news, live wrestling chat, and pure hilarity. Head over to twitter.com/PWR show and be part of the conversation.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the Pro Wrestling Report Primetime Saturday night. Damian Nelson and David Hero here coming to you post-WrestleMania. And it's another WrestleMania special edition, David Hero, as last Sunday night. The Showcase of the Immortals took place in New Orleans at the Superdome, which is a dump, by the way. I can't believe how amazingly crappy that building is. Looked beautiful, though, on TV. I watched WrestleMania on the WWE Network when I got back to town on Monday. And let's talk about the biggest news to come out of WrestleMania.
The biggest news is that you made it home.
That is true to a degree. But the streak is over, folks. The Undertaker is 21-1 at WrestleMania. He lost. He lost his first match in 22 years at WrestleMania this past Sunday, and he did so to Brock Lesnar. Now, no one expected this. No one saw it coming. I will say this. I, for the last year at least, have been saying the streak should end, much to a lot of negative feedback from y'all, but we'll explain why.
Because the streak should end to CM Punk. He's the size of Taker's calf.
But let's talk about the unexpected nature of this victory by Brock Lesnar. When it happened, we were in the suite in the Superdome with some of our greatest fans as well, and Al Snow was with us, too, in the suite.
Well, he's one of our greatest fans, too.
And when it happened, I remember looking, and we're watching the match. It ended. There was that 3 count. A silence fell over the Superdome. 75,200 people.
Did they screw up the finish?
A silence. That's what a lot of people thought initially. And, you know, I said, wait a minute, it's over. And still, there's this flux, which may not have been more than 5 seconds.
It felt forever.
It felt like forever until that graphic popped up on the screen. There was no bell, there was no music, there was no announcement. The graphic, 21-1. At that moment, you've seen the faces of the fans.
You celebrated.
Because it had to happen that way, and we'll talk about that in a minute. You saw the faces of the fans. Shock and awe. Amazingly unexpected turn of events in that matchup. The Undertaker loses to Brock Lesnar. They did it so perfectly because they did leave that doubt. Was this really the way it was supposed to happen? Did Chad Patton count the right way? Is this match over? Is the streak over? And Paul Heyman's face. He, too, had that look of disbelief and shock. Because Brock Lesnar had that look of disbelief and shock.
Only very few people knew the finish.
4
people. The referee didn't even know the finish of the match. They weren't going to tell him. And the rule in the WWE is if they don't kick out, you still make the 3 count. So that was the shock of the referee, like, oh, my God, I'm going to get fired. But Taker didn't kick out.
Yeah.
And, I mean, I sat there. I'm like, was it a 2.5? I mean, I didn't think Taker was going to lose.
Yeah.
You know, but at the end of the day, it makes sense. He lost to the most legitimate, tough guy, bad guy, monster in the entire company.
And Brock Lesnar deserved this, folks, and here's why. We've talked on this program for a very long time about how Undertaker made Brock Lesnar what he was back in 2002 after he won the championship from The Rock. When Brock Lesnar, month in and month out, defeated Undertaker in a series of tremendous matchups in the fall of 2002, Brock Lesnar would not have had the legitimacy that he did have if not for The Undertaker. 2 years ago, that UFC fight, Undertaker saying to Brock Lesnar, do you want to do this? In his mind at that time, Undertaker was done. He was ready to tie it up. And let's also not lose sight of the fact that one man decided that the streak would end at WrestleMania 30 last Sunday. One man picked who would end that streak. One man made the final call that it would be 21-1. And that one man was The Undertaker himself, ladies and gentlemen. The streak is over because he chose to end it. And I got to say this. There is no better person to have done it than Brock Lesnar. And really, if you talk about the match was pretty crappy. Guess why, folks? The Undertaker can't go anymore. He hasn't been able to for the last 2 years. In my mind, the reason the streak needed to end is because why else would he stop wrestling at WrestleMania? Why else would he accept the Hall of Fame induction? Keep in mind, Undertaker made his very first appearance at the WWE Hall of Fame this past Saturday night in the tribute to Paul Bearer. Why else would the streak end? You would want him to go 22, 23, 24, 25, 26-0 if he did not ultimately lose a match. Now all the reason in the world exists for him to hang it up, hang up the boots, and call it a day and walk away. Also, more to the point that The Undertaker can't go anymore, he was literally transported to a hospital immediately following that matchup, and riding along with him were Vince McMahon, Brock Lesnar, and Paul Heyman. Guys, I know you want more. I know you want the streak to continue. I know you didn't want the streak to end. But at some point, all good things must come to a finish, if you will. And the finish in this matchup was Brock Lesnar with the 1-2-3 win over The Undertaker.
My biggest concern about that match going in was that Taker couldn't handle the rough and tough style of Brock Lesnar, whereas in years past he's had guys that can help hide his flaws, create motion, whatnot. Brock Lesnar is not that kind of guy. Brock Lesnar went down and beat Undertaker up, is what he did. That's what Brock Lesnar does. And for the fans that say, well, Brock Lesnar lost to Triple H, Brock Lesnar lost to John Cena, yes, he did, but those were gimmick matches. Those were street fights. Those were no holds barred, where you can use weapons and whatnot. This was your basic wrestling match, and Brock Lesnar should never lose a basic wrestling match.
And here's what was also interesting about Brock Lesnar is so many people, and it blew up on Twitter on Sunday, Brock Lesnar, how dare The Undertaker lose to a part-time star? A part-timer doesn't deserve it. Undertaker and the streak should not lose to a part-time star. All losing sight of the fact that Undertaker wrestles once a year, folks. Brock Lesnar is more of a full-time star than Undertaker is a full-time star. It just, if you step back, and I think a lot of the emotion has gone away, if you step back and look at it from that perspective, this was another storybook ending. The streak had to end. WrestleMania 30 was the perfect place for it because remember how WrestleMania 30 started. The three legends of the business representing 3 decades of WrestleMania.
The 3 biggest box office draws.
Hulk Hogan, The Rock, and Stone Cold Steve Austin kick off the show. You look at what happened at the end of the show with a new WWE World Champion being crowned. This WrestleMania was turning a corner that was continuing to be turned the next night on Raw, and The Undertaker streak ending was the most profound piece of that turn that this WrestleMania was. The streak is over, folks. It was a good run while it lasted, and The Undertaker deserves to be able to walk away from the business. The Undertaker deserves that Hall of Fame induction that he will get. But one question that's lingering out there, and there are reports out there, Dave Meltzer being one of them reporting it, that Sting has signed a WWE contract. The icon Sting has signed a WWE contract, and that match, the iconic match, Sting versus Taker, may indeed happen. But folks, I believe with all my heart that The Undertaker will never wrestle another match again, especially against Sting.
That match would be terrible because both guys can't carry each other.
Yeah.
I mean, on paper, sure, the fans want to see it. I mean, but for what reason?
Right. Streak's
There's
over.
no history between the two of them ever.
Except their characters are dark and somewhat demented, if you will, and thus it makes sense from a fantasy movie standpoint, I guess you can call it, that those two battle it out on the grandest stage of them all.
That won't be a battle.
Yeah, it would be. Now, and a lot of the people who said the streak shouldn't have ended and that it shouldn't have been Brock Lesnar also will readily admit that it was not a good match. Now, people are liking it or are tacking it up to the fact that The Undertaker reportedly suffered a concussion mid-match and was clearly out of it. But
Taker's had both hips replaced. His knees have been worked on. His neck has been, he is. Aspirin and bandages are keeping him together.
WrestleMania 28. We were at the WWE hotel after that match between he and Triple H, where he got driven out on the cart.
On the flatbed.
And, I mean, we heard some things, David Hero. At that moment, at that match, Taker was basically done in Atlanta. I mean, he was in just as bad a shape that night as he was after WrestleMania 30 this past Sunday. So, with all due respect, I'm glad the streak was there. I'm glad the streak happened. I'm not going to sit here and say I thought it would end
And
this
we've
past
seen
Sunday,
the best matches
but it
of
did.
his streak.
Absolutely.
With Shawn Michaels, with Triple H, with Punk, and then we saw it end.
But it was because of not just Taker, but Shawn Michaels, Triple H, and Punk that those matches were fantastic.
Absolutely.
The streak is over. A shocking turn of events, and it may have overshadowed what else happened at WrestleMania, which was the big change in WWE Championship, the WWE Championship, where one of the three men who would be walking in to that big main event matchup at WrestleMania walked out as a new World Heavyweight Champion without pinning the champion, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to talk about that after this timeout. More of our special coverage of WrestleMania 30 continues here on the Pro Wrestling Report Primetime Saturday night.
If you've been hurt in a car wreck, the insurance company may try to stop you from getting what's fair.
After my car wreck, the insurance company tried to stop me from getting what was fair. I called Gruber Law Offices.
Be careful. Call us right away.
They better be careful. Now I've got Gruber Law Offices.
Call us. Let us get started on your case right now.
They green-lighted my case and got me $100,000.
Gruber Law Offices. One call, that's all. Call 276-6666.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the special edition of the Pro Wrestling Report Primetime Saturday night here on My 24 Milwaukee. Damian Nelson sitting alongside David Hero. And I want to take this opportunity to thank all of our great fans who showed up to the SWO event this past Saturday night in New Orleans, an amazing event. Kevin Nash, Scotty 2 Hottie, Lisa Marie, formerly Victoria in WWE, Al Snow, Shane Helms, and the legendary Axe and Smash of Demolition. It was shenanigans.
What a
Q&A,
Q&A, too.
An amazing Q&A session where you'll only see it if you saw it. A great night in New Orleans to kick off WrestleMania weekend, and then all the great people who came down and participated in the PWR experience at WrestleCon. Very, very amazing event. Saw hundreds of fans on Saturday and Sunday. And then, of course, Sweet and Sexy.
Sweet and Sexy. Good God Almighty.
Big suite in the Superdome. Some amazing people in there with us as well. Next opportunity to join us in a suite for a major wrestling event is SummerSlam in Los Angeles. And you heard about that later from Linda in the event center. But David, we're talking about WrestleMania 30 this past Sunday. We just spent 10 minutes talking about the streak coming to an end. But there's also a brand new WWE World Heavyweight Champion. Daniel Bryan, folks, defeats Triple H in the opening contest, an amazing matchup, wrestling contest between those two. Then goes on to participate in a three-way dance, if you will.
Triple H, the guy that derails people, that buries people.
He buries everyone. He only cares about himself.
He starts off in the opener.
Opening match at WrestleMania.
And
loses that match.
And does the clean job.
Clean job.
The guy that doesn't put anybody over?
He doesn't put anybody over.
I'll be damned.
That's what we hear.
I saw different.
Anyways, he would go on to that main event matchup along with Randy Orton and Batista for Randy Orton's WWE World Heavyweight Championship. And there were shenanigans, of course, as Stephanie McMahon and Triple H get involved in that matchup. Daniel Bryan at one point carried out via a stretcher, gets off the stretcher in a Mick Foley Hell in a Cell 1998
Spirit
moment.
of 76 moment.
Comes back to the ring and wins that matchup. David, they framed it so perfectly. Daniel Bryan's winning of the WWE World Championship on Sunday at WrestleMania. From the opening match to the end, you thought there was doubt. There were many close pins, or close falls, near falls, if you will, in that main event matchup where you thought Batista might do it. You thought they might put it on Batista. You thought they might leave it on Randy Orton. But ultimately, Daniel Bryan would pin Batista.
No, he made Batista tap.
Oh, exactly,
The guy
yes.
who the fans booed.
Made Batista tap
made
out.
him tap.
And won the WWE World Heavyweight Championship.
Yes.
Fanfare, confetti, pyrotechnics. It was a celebration.
It's a good thing they bought the right kind of confetti. It would have been awkward if Batista won and it was red and white. You know? But, I mean, great for Daniel Bryan. I mean, but how about the CM Punk chant? Towards the end?
They had nothing else.
No.
They had nothing else.
Do you honestly think they're going to bring out CM Punk when they're trying to make Daniel Bryan the guy?
WrestleMania was not missing Phil Brooks.
No.
This past
not
Sunday.
At all. But you know what? As amazing as it was to see Daniel Bryan win, I think the crowd was still deflated from Taker losing.
They were. The Divas match was a bit of a buffer in between where AJ retained the Divas Championship. You know, she is the best diva in the world.
Absolutely.
And then this matchup, yeah, there was a bit of a hush still over the crowd. You know,
there were people in the suite with us that were legit PO'd about that.
Yes. Very.
I mean, Frank was stomping his feet, and, doing all that Italian hand gesturing stuff.
Here's what's interesting, though, about that, and I sent out a tweet to this regard. The way you felt at that moment is the reason the streak ended.
Absolutely.
Because wrestling's all about what? Emotion.
And let's face it, you're not going to get both. You're
No.
not going to keep the streak going and give the belt to Daniel Bryan. There had to be a trade-off somewhere.
There definitely did have to be a trade-off somewhere, but Daniel Bryan did it. He did it at WrestleMania. And whether the streak took from that or not, the ending of the streak took from that or not, still a great moment for a man who went up through the independents, through Ring of Honor, through NXT, got fired from WWE, brought back to WWE.
It's a great story.
To win the championship.
It really is a great story.
At the biggest WrestleMania. This is definitely one of the top 3 WrestleManias of all time.
Absolutely.
For its significance.
And you know what? Congratulations to Daniel Bryan. I know he can thank me for making sure his Yes movement gets on track.
You hopped off the Yes movement before he won, thus meaning you can take no credit.
But I helped him get it rolling.
Oh, you're
I
sure
helped
you
him
did.
get new merchandise.
I'm sure you think you did.
Did you see all the Yeselmania shirts and stuff in New Orleans?
Oh, you know what? I'm surprised you did, because you've been in denial since the Royal Rumble that those shirts existed and that the people were buying his merchandise and his beards and his
Well, they're all
armbands and
knockoffs,
such.
but still. They weren't authentic. They didn't have the gimmick that says licensed. God bless you.
There is yet more to talk about as we cover WrestleMania 30, ladies and gentlemen. But on the biggest week in the world of professional wrestling, I am very intrigued to find out who this week's Diamond of the Ring is. So, David Hero, enlighten us if you will.
This week's Robert Hack Diamonds of the Ring. You got to give up 2 diamonds this week because you have the new WWE World Champion in Daniel Bryan, and then the new TNA World Impact Wrestling Heavyweight Champion in Eric Young. Yes, they could pass for twins, if not brothers, brotherly twins, whatnot. Both guys go on to defeat the Evil Empire. Eric Young defeats Magnus, and Daniel Bryan defeats the Authority. This week's Robert Hack Diamonds of the Ring, the place where they pay cash for gold, is Daniel Bryan and Eric Young.
2 bearded champions who are similar in stature, size, and appearance.
Right?
In WWE and TNA. TNA probably picked the wrong week to do this.
Absolutely they did. Put it this way. Taker streak happens. Daniel Bryan wins the world title. Ultimate Warrior dies. TNA, new world champion, is the 5th best story.
Well, I think
Because
Rockstar...
the 4th best story is you coming back alive from New Orleans.
How about Rockstar Spuds? What I think was a tribute to the Ultimate Warrior. That suit he was wearing.
It was a tribute to the Ultimate Warrior. It
That's
really
still
was.
one of the best talents in the business right now, Rockstar Spud.
Oh, he's a great photobomber, too.
When we come back, ladies and gentlemen, more about WWE WrestleMania 30 this past Sunday night. We'll be back in just a moment.
TNA Impact Wrestling returns to Racine for the first time in almost 4 years with the all-new 2014 World Tour. In the main event, World Champion Magnus battles Mr. Anderson in a World Heavyweight title match. Come an hour early for photos and autographs at the hottest fist-pumping pre-show party hosted by Rockstar Spud and DJ Zima. Free with your ticket Saturday, May 3rd at Racine Civic Center Memorial Hall. Tickets are on sale now at Ticketmaster.com. TNA Impact Wrestling. As fun as it gets.
Welcome to the PWR Event Center, brought to you by Gruber Law Offices. One call, that's all. Impact Wrestling is coming to Milwaukee Land with the huge show in Racine on Saturday, May 3rd with Mr. Anderson in the main event. Tickets are on sale now at Ticketmaster.com. PWR is bringing sweet and sexy to Los Angeles for SummerSlam. Coming off the heels of last weekend's PWR events, tickets are moving very fast for Los Angeles. Order yours now at PWRshow.com and be a part of it. And that's it for this week's Event Center presented by Gruber Law Offices.
With the shocking passing of the Ultimate Warrior this week, Nancy Grace of HLN took to the airwaves and decided to lump all pro wrestling deaths into the steroid cycle. Yes, it's true that most pro wrestling deaths have been caused by drug abuse, and Nancy Grace took it too far when she even said Owen Hart died from steroids. Social media blew up during the show, with fans ranting and raving in disgust, and rightfully so. Why didn't Nancy Grace talk about all the financial impact the WWE just brought to New Orleans, or about John Cena granting the most Make-A-Wishes, or even the triumphant 18-year return made by the Ultimate Warrior? Nancy Grace wanted to grab headlines, and she did. She also made herself look foolish. Unfortunately, so did many of the wrestling fans on Twitter, as they took to name-calling and swearing on social media. We as fans let our passion get the best of us. Instead of being diplomatic, some of us turned into bullies. We as fans don't want to be known as idiots or uneducated. All that does is empower the people like Nancy Grace. We need to choose our words wisely, and by doing so, respect and honor the legacy of greats like Owen Hart and the Ultimate Warrior. Enough is enough. It's time for a change. And always believe. And with that, David Hero has spoken.
Nancy Grace. I've never liked her. I think she's the worst of sensationalistic journalism that exists out there. And this woman,
Terrible. Absolutely terrible.
and she railroaded DDP, who says he thought he was appearing on the show to talk about the life of the Warrior, and she makes it a steroid issue.
Of course it is.
And then puts up
That's all she
graphics about all
has.
the wrestlers that died while making it appear as if all of them died
And to
as a
say
result
Owen
of the
Hart
same
died
thing.
of steroids, she's insane.
She absolutely should be
You know
fired.
what Cody Rhodes told me? Because, Cody and I, we actually chatted a little bit in New Orleans.
He still doesn't like you. We had a long chat about.
He just doesn't like how tall I am. He said my height is obscene. But he mentioned that Nancy Grace was dating a wrestler in the 80s and got dumped by that wrestler. And that's why she's been on this witch hunt ever since.
Hell hath?
It's very true.
Well, Nancy Grace, here's to hoping you lose your job for this just disgraceful way that you see what I did there?
Yeah, Nancy Disgrace.
Disgraceful way. Nancy Disgraceful. Done. Certified. Stamped.
Endorsed.
WrestleMania, ladies and gentlemen. The Battle Royal. Andre the Giant Memorial Battle
Awesome.
Royal. 31 men would be participating in that matchup, and one man would win it with a huge body slam. And how else could it have ended? A body slam from Cesaro to the Big Show. Up, walk a little bit, drop him over the top rope, and he won that Battle Royal.
Cesaro's a stud. He really is.
A stud who is now aligned with Paul Heyman. He's a Heyman guy.
amazing.
After this past Monday night, and
How great that
Paul
that's-
Heyman has erased any doubt that he is one of the top two managers in the history of professional
Well,
wrestling.
Bobby's still number one. Always. Heenan family will
Can
always...
Bobby be number one of his era and Paul Heyman be number one of this era?
Sure, but Bobby's number one all time.
Okay. All right. Well, it's a debate for a later time, but he has definitely cemented himself in that solid number two, if not number one position, did Paul Heyman. But how about Cesaro? The strength, the monster, the beast. Last night on SmackDown, bit of a heelish Cesaro, which I guess
he's
is
a Paul
where we
Heyman.
need
He
to
has
go.
to be.
But, wow. And then on Monday, detaching himself from Zeb Coulter. Him and Swagger now having a little bit of a falling out. I expect we'll see that match at Extreme Rules, but he wins the Battle Royal.
And he needed it. Now that's how you elevate somebody, is by having him pick up Big Show, toss him over the top, and that's what the fans wanted. I mean, even during the tag match in the pre-show, watching it with Al Snow, he's like, why are they cheering the heels?
Yeah.
Why is We the People so over?
Right.
The fans wanted the Real Americans to defeat the Usos. They really did, but they didn't get it. And then when they split the Real Americans up, Al was completely confused. But obviously bigger and better things for Cesaro. I just hope Swagger doesn't get lost.
And that happened in the tag match on the pre-show where Cesaro and Swagger came to blows.
Mm-hmm.
John Cena gets a win over Bray Wyatt, but that's less important than Bray Wyatt's performance on the greatest stage of them all at WrestleMania.
Bray Wyatt showed he's a main event guy. Great match with John Cena.
Great promo last night on SmackDown. Looks like we're on our way to Extreme Rules.
The fans were all upset that Cena didn't put Bray Wyatt over. Hey, you got Daniel Bryan.
He didn't need to put him over.
No.
He just needed to put him there.
And first of all, Superman does not lose clean to Lex Luthor.
What about Captain America? He doesn't lose clean to Red Skull.
No, but
Or the Winter Soldier.
Red Skull tries to beat Captain America every chance he gets.
The Shield gets a win
still
over
don't
the
get
Outlaws and Kane. Short matchup there, David Hero.
Well, that was the way of sending the Outlaws home.
Yeah.
You know, that's what it really was. They give the Outlaws the WrestleMania payoff. The Shield looked extremely strong. Double power bomb. Billy Gunn's going to Orlando. Road Dogg's going back to the corporate offices.
That was WrestleMania 30. Let's rank it, David Hero. Top 10 WrestleManias of all time for you?
It's probably top 5.
Top 5?
Top 5.
Excellent,
Yeah,
excellent,
yeah.
excellent. It's definitely top 3 for me, folks. Kudos to WWE. And remember, I sat in this chair just last week, 2 weeks ago, rather.
We were
and
not
said
enthused.
this WrestleMania had no buzz, had no excitement, had nothing behind it, and they would come out and deliver one of the greatest
Do you
of
know
all
what
time.
really got it rolling for me? Was the start of the show.
It could have ended there.
I could have gone home
and been happy.
and it would have been my number one
Yep.
WrestleMania.
Yeah, exactly.
Because Hogan, Austin, and Rock, I was happy. You know, a big smile on my face, like, wow, that's really happening.
The wrestling conversation continues, ladies and gentlemen, on the Double D podcast, which you can get on iTunes and PWRshow.com. Drops this Monday, a brand new episode. We're out of time here on My 24 Milwaukee for that one. Thank you so much for joining us here for this special edition, talking about WWE's WrestleMania 30. We'll see you again next Saturday night.
Follow us on Twitter for breaking news, live wrestling chat, and pure hilarity. Head over to twitter.com/PWR Show and be part of the conversation.